Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update Positive Correlations and Lifestyle Quest segments, we're talking about being lazy. Now, to me, lazy is not a bad word. In fact, it is the gateway to efficiency. Many successful people use their inherent laziness tendencies to become more efficient with the things they do, especially unpleasant tasks, because getting them over with as quickly as possible allows them to spend more time on other things. So-called lazy people have a set of tools they often use to get the job done. Things like focus, not overthinking, doing hard things first, putting large tasks into a framework, breaking large tasks into smaller parts, essentially a project management framework. Interested in finding out more? Stick with us. Hey guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get value from them or know someone who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, and leaving comments. This is PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah. Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. The word lazy has a very negative connotation, but having a tendency to be lazy can actually help you out. Merriam Websters dictionary defines the word lazy as disinclined to activity or exertion, not energetic or vigorous, and gives the following example. The lazy child tried to avoid household chores. Mia, I understand we have a couple of stories about some lazy children. What can you tell us about them? Well, Leah, our stories tonight are about fraternal twins Charles and Claire. They were both acknowledged lazy kids who rushed through their chores and homework. Their teachers all said that they were bright children, but they often lacked the motivation or perseverance to do their school assignments very well or completely. This resulted in some poor marks over the years, but eventually they learned lessons about how being lazy can work to their advantage. These sound like very interesting stories you have for us tonight, Mia. I think I have something in common with these two. Being lazy can lead you to be efficient and planning things out that need to get done. This, in turn, can lead you to more successful projects. Anyone who starts out with a plan is usually better off than those who don't have one. And if you're consistently accomplishing your tasks, you're more likely to be successful overall than someone who doesn't. Now it's time for our first quote question in the show. Do you know who said, "I am lazy, but for some reason I'm so paranoid that I end up working hard"? Mia's stories and the answer to this question coming right up. Charles and Claire are both successful adults, but when they were growing up, they were fairly typical kids who never wanted to do their chores or homework. For several years, their parents were worried that they would never figure things out. Claire is now a very successful project manager. She's been working as a project manager for the last 15 years and really enjoys the work and challenges that come with it. She credits her skills in planning ahead and organization with the lessons she learned from being a lazy kid. When she was younger, she much preferred reading on her own to doing homework or her after-school chores. She was constantly panicking 10 minutes before her parents got home from work to finish cleaning her room. In the morning, she would remember that she hadn't finished her homework from the night before, so she would try to get most of it done on the bus. Sometimes this worked for her, but usually it just got her in trouble. Claire's parents scolded her for being lazy because they often caught her in the act of still doing her chores and sometimes coming home before she started. Her teacher scolded her for turning in half-finished, sloppy, and incorrect work. This went on for a very long time. Claire felt that all these other things just got in the way of her reading. One year, though, her teacher got very angry with her for her poor math scores because she wasn't turning in her homework and was about to fail. When her parents found out, it got even worse. Claire was grounded for 2 weeks from reading anything not related to schoolwork. Obviously, this was very upsetting for her, since her books had always been her escape. Looking back, Claire now realizes that this event helped bring her laziness into focus and rethink how she was doing things. During her 2-week reading restriction, there was no reason to rush through tasks anymore since she was not able to do what she wanted afterwards anyway. She used the 2 weeks to evaluate her situation and make some new plans. Claire figured out that most of her so-called homework assignments could mostly be done in class if she hurried through her regular work. Before leaving class, she could make some quick notes of what was left to do. Math always took longer, so there was probably no way to get that done in class, but she could still review it before leaving class and estimate the amount of time it would take to do. She also decided to change her timing on her chores. Claire already knew the fastest and most efficient way of doing her chores after a few years of getting everything done, or mostly done, before her parents got home. So she put herself on a schedule. Work first, read second. As soon as she got home from school, she started her chores for the day, 15 minutes tops. Then she went through her notes from class on what she had to do before her classes the next day, starting with the hard stuff first. Math would take about an hour. The rest of her schoolwork could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Any assignments that were just reading, she would leave for the time she spent on the bus. Now that Claire had a system and schedule, she was still spending about the same amount of time on the school and classwork. Maybe a little bit longer at math. Now that she was organizing her time better, she was no longer working under pressure. The big differences were that the quality of her work was going up, none of it was late, and she wasn't wasting time listening to scoldings when she could have been reading. So she got to enjoy it even more than she did before. When new group projects or more difficult subjects came up in her classes, she was able to get her questions answered before leaving for the day because she was reviewing the material and requirements there instead of at home where she would have had to have figured it out for herself. And it would have taken a lot longer. Using the work first, read second strategy helped her become much more efficient and actually resulted in more reading time, not less. Claire says that she owes much of her success to being lazy and wanting to read her books rather than do anything else. Even now that she doesn't read as much fiction as she used to, she has conditioned herself to try to find the most efficient way of doing something before starting. Sometimes she has to do a task a couple of times the hard way in order to figure out a better way of doing it, but she is always working to that end. Creating lists, using templates, establishing standard operating procedures, reviewing new activities before starting, and periodically re-reviewing the way things are done to see if there's a better way. All of these things she learned as a result of being a lazy kid who just wasn't interested in doing what she was supposed to do. Claire's story about learning efficiency and becoming more productive through laziness was because the order she was doing things was not effective, and it got her in trouble. Lots of people, kids and grown-up alike, learn these lessons when their regular way of doing things just doesn't work. Oftentimes, the amount of time we spend putting off doing what we know needs to be done would be better spent just doing it. An incentive or punishment can often bring that need into focus. If you're self-aware, though, it doesn't have to be that way. That is so true, Mia. I know I have problems with procrastination when it comes to doing what I know I need to do, but I don't want to do. Learning how to prioritize is another lazy person and project management skill. How about you? What kind of things do you avoid doing even when you know it won't take long to finish if you just get started? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Up next, we have Claire's twin brother Charles's story. He came to the same conclusion that Claire did, but he had a different inspiration for his change. And our mid-show quote answer and new question. Do you know who said, "I'm lazy, but for some reason I'm so paranoid that I end up working hard"? It was actor, comedian, writer, director, and producer Seth Rogen. And our second half question is, do you know who said progress isn't made by early risers? It's made by lazy men trying to find easier ways to do something? The answer to this and Mia's story about Charles is coming right up, so please stay with us. Charles had the same issue as his sister, but his homework and chores distractions started out with playing video games. He spent every minute of his spare time playing them, talking about them, and working out strategies for the game of the week. His trouble started when another activity was taking way too much of his time, and compromises had to be made. Charles is currently working as a civilian project manager on military support contracts. Previously, he was a military officer, so this fits well with his background. He credits his success in both his military and project management careers with the lessons he learned as a kid as well. As a kid, Charles loved gaming, and for a time, his world revolved around it. He often shared the same scolding from parents and teachers that his sister Claire received, but managed to stay out of the big trouble that she got into. He did lose gaming privileges every now and then, but he could still talk to his friends about it and devise strategies even when he couldn't play. Having his gaming console taken away didn't necessarily result in doing more schoolwork and chores. Since he didn't get in as much trouble as his sister, it took him a little longer to learn these lessons and got to benefit from her assessments. Charles had to change his habits when, after taking football in his physical education class, he realized how much he enjoyed playing this game. At first, it was just a friendly game on the weekends, but as he got better, he started wanting to play more, and he wanted to try out for the school team. The stuff he had to do was definitely getting in the way of the stuff he wanted to do. And once he made the school team, it got harder. If he wanted to continue playing with his team, he had to keep up his grades, so skimping on his homework was not an option. At first, he tried doing everything the same way he was before. Doing his homework right before bed meant that he was up late every night and falling asleep in class the next day, or not doing very well in practice since he was so tired. It didn't take long for him to realize he was going to have to find a different way of getting his chores and schoolwork done. Charles hadn't really listened to Claire when she was talking about organizing her time a few months before. He was only vaguely aware that she rushed home to do chores now instead of hiding in her room with a book. After falling asleep in class one day and Claire kicking him awake, he decided to ask her how she made changes. He really liked her idea of doing as much as he could in class, or at least reviewing the material before leaving so he would know how much time it would take before he started. Charles implemented the same strategy as Claire, but called his work first, play second. The difference for him was that his video game time was definitely going to have to cut back, but that was okay since he was exchanging it for playing football, something that he enjoyed as much, if not more, than playing video games. Sometimes he missed the sense of accomplishment he felt after doing a long quest in a game, but it was still a good trade-off for him. A good practice made up for it. Charles did do things a little different than his sister, though, starting with putting himself on a schedule. He was not able to do chores right after school since he had football practice most days, so he did them as soon as he got home. Then he spent up to 2 hours on his homework before getting into his video games. If he finished the homework early, then he could play earlier. His activities weren't as flexible as Claire's, so he needed the schedule to stay on track and still do what he wanted. He started with a schedule he thought he would be able to keep to, knowing that he could easily make changes if needed. After a month on his new schedule, things were going much better. He was a lot less frustrated with the time it took to do homework and chores because he knew at the end of the day he would be able to spend more time on his games. His grades were improving like his sister's as well, since he was more focused when he was doing the work. Charles says that this focus and ability to plan out his activities helped him in college, his military career, and his civilian one as well. Taking ideas and turning them into plans, putting them into action, keeping track of what he was doing, and closing them out when you're done is the project management process. And it was all inspired by wanting to play video games. Every now and then, when he and his sister talk on the phone, they laugh about how they both became very efficient with their time by being lazy, and how that prepared them for being project managers. When Charles only had one fun activity he wanted to spend a lot of time on, he was willing to shirk his chores and schoolwork. Once he had two things he wanted to do, he needed to start organizing his time better and focus on what he was doing in order to complete it in the most efficient way so that he could do both. His love of leisure activities inspired him to make those changes, and he ended up learning some valuable time management and project management type skills in the process. In Claire's case, there was an external reason for making changes. She got in trouble with her parents and teacher, and it caused her to lose out on her favorite activity for a while. When it got bad enough for her to try to do something about it, she managed to rearrange how she was doing her tasks to fit everything in so that she was still able to spend as much time reading as before. Being more efficient, having a plan, and doing things in a different order helped her do this. In Charles's story, the reason he needed to change was internal. He already had a full schedule, and when he wanted to add something new, he had to figure out how to do it to fit it in. He did lose some of his video game time, but not as much as he would have if he hadn't figured out how to be more efficient with his other tasks. They both displayed aspects of being lazy, according to the definition I gave at the beginning of the show, but learning how to be more like project managers, they were both still able to do the things they loved, and it set them up for doing better in school and their respective jobs later. Now it's time for the answer to our final quote question. Do you know who said, "Progress isn't made by early risers, it's made by lazy men trying to find easier ways to do something"? It was aeronautical engineer, naval officer, and science fiction author Robert Heinlein. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia and our Positive Correlations and Lifestyle Quest segments for this week. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Hey there, before you go, don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing the comments too.